Good to see you back at the Ramen Spot.
So, N7 Day has just come and gone. For those of you who don't know, November 7th has become a day for fans of the Mass Effect games to come together and will news and updates from Bioware. The next installment in the series, Mass Effect 5, is not ready to be shown off yet, but Bioware does drop cryptic hints each N7 Day anyway in appreciation of its fans. This year gave us a very short teaser for what the new protagonist might look like, and the hype and speculation is really starting to heat up because of it. We are huge Mass Effect fans here. Fox and I might have been raised up on other types of RPGs like Final Fantasy for me and Kingdom Hearts for her, but the cinematic storytelling with all that choice-driven gameplay has become among our favorite ways to play RPGs. When Bioware released the original Mass Effect, and again soon after with Dragon Age, they created this modern style of presenting epic RPG stories that has since become the gold standard, at least to us. As such, I'm going to be bringing up Larian's new classic Baldur's Gate 3 a lot in this list because as it is a direct evolution of the Bioware formula, there are so many ideas and refinements that can be taken from it to make the new Mass Effect an even bigger success than anyone could have imagined. Let's get started. One of the key complaints that some players had about Baldur's Gate 3 was that they didn't like turn-based gameplay in other games, so much so that they refused to even try it in this one. Fortunately, Bioware doesn't have this problem with Mass Effect because its combat comes in the form of the third-person shooter, which is a combat style that is much more mainstream than the turn-based tactics of BG3. As great as the past Mass Effect games are though, the shooting mechanics are definitely one of the clunkier aspects of its gameplay. Characters in Mass Effect move quite slowly and the management of all your abilities plus directing your companions can be tough to control. But it doesn't have to be this way. There are lots of games that Mass Effect can borrow mechanics from to improve the shooter gameplay that forms its combat foundation. The industry standard for that pure game feel, the feeling of customizing and shooting your weapon, adjusting for its recoil, boost jumping and sliding to avoid damage, and firing off all kinds of unique powers is Bungie's destiny. Getting as close to the feel of combat in that game would be incredible for Mass Effect, if they wanted to go for a more action-oriented gameplay. Massive's The Division is another great shooter that can provide examples for how to update the cover-based third-person action in a modern way. Of course, there are more great shooters out there than just these, but for us, this would be the standard that we would love for the combat in Mass Effect 5 to strive to match, to give the game a huge step up in quality from the previous 4 entries. I mentioned earlier that it could be clunky to control both all of your own weapons and abilities in battle and also those of your companions fighting alongside you, and that leads me to my next gameplay feature I would like to see in Mass Effect 5, and that is co-op. Baldur's Gate 3 has proven that a Bioware-style RPG can work both as a completely single-player experience and as a complete co-op experience, along with everything in between, and it doesn't have to harm the gameplay or the story in any way. The fact is, having AI-controlled companions is cool and everything, but no matter how much control you have over them, they will never bring as much to your party as a friend playing alongside you would. I've experienced a 4-player playthrough of both Divinity Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, and it is going to be incredibly difficult going back to not having my friends by my side when I'm taking on whatever threat is facing the galaxy this time. Speaking of the threat to the galaxy, let's talk about villains. Of course, gamers will have their favorites, but for me, none of the villains of any of the past Mass Effect games were particularly memorable. They were good enough for the stories they were in, sure, but we need much more time with the antagonists in order to develop them into the threats they can be. It would be great to build up a villain, or maybe more than one, that is as iconic as, say, Ganondorf, or Sephiroth, or Handsome Jack. If this next Mass Effect entry is going to be the first of a planned trilogy, then having a major villain that builds up over the course of several games is ideal, while having a smaller threat that can be taken care of in each individual game. The Reapers served this role in the first Mass Effect trilogy, but the nature of their nameless, faceless threat is exactly what I don't want to see in this new game. I want the threat to be present, to have a personality and motivations besides simple destruction. Next is one that was a point of contention in past games, but should be an easy fix in the next one. Romanceable characters should not be locked to gender. In Baldur's Gate 3, for example, no matter if you were male, female, or other, you could romance any character you wanted. You didn't get blocked from a romance with, let's say, Shadowheart because you played as a male and she preferred females. Since no romance options had any preference at all, players of all types were free to romance whoever they wanted with no restrictions, and that's how inclusive all games should strive to be. As an aside, I know this is not all Bioware EA's fault. Some of this was on the news for causing a stir when Mass Effect released, but, I think by now, with all the unnecessary losses that EA has taken with games that could have earned them lots of money over long periods of time, it should be obvious that we all want the same thing from Mass Effect 5. Assuming the game is good, we want it to be financially successful enough that BioWare and EA have reason to quickly get back in there and make more. To that end, one thing we all hope is that the very results-driven and intelligent people in EA's marketing department have learned from those previous disasters and take a no-nonsense approach to monetization. Look, we know that you guys have got to get as much money as you can from the games that you put out. You've got thousands of developers and support staff to pay for the years it takes them to make these AAA games, and that expert work does not come cheap. And the nature of shareholders wanting results, we get it. But please, take note of recent industry successes like Baldur's Gate 3 and learn from the unpopular practices that EA has already employed on its games that backfired so spectacularly. Release the game complete at launch, however long that takes, and charge however much you need to with no bullshit. If the game is a masterpiece that is the most expensive game ever created and you need to charge $100 for it, do that. But don't charge $50 more to play it a day early and put every companion in a loot box and make every planet a separately purchased DLC or something. Just put out a good product for a fair price and players will show up to support. And those are my 5 most wanted gameplay features for the next Mass Effect. No matter what, I'm excited to be able to play it, and I have faith that BioWare will come out with something mind-blowing. What are you guys most looking forward to in Mass Effect 5? Let me know down in the comments below. Let's theorize. And hopefully, somehow, the next game has what we are all looking for. Thank you for listening.